Health IQ Podcast, The Truth About Carbohydrates and Diabetes Management, Part 2.
Well, I brought my plate of lunch here from Loretta's. So I'm happy to show you how these tools apply, how you can use them. Very simple. So the very first one is awareness, which we talked about in our first video, but identifying which foods contain carbohydrates, because those are the ones that are going to raise our blood sugar. So any kind of grain or bread-like product, starchy vegetables, potatoes and corn, beans, lentils, milk, yogurt, ice cream, fruit, and then, of course, any kind of sweets. The second is practicing portion control. So what is a really fast and simple way that we can do that? Your hand is an excellent guide for portions. Anything that we would scoop with a spoon here, like we served the rice and the beans, we scooped it out with a spoon. A fist is a good size serving for that. A tortilla, an open hand, the diameter of an open hand is considered one serving size. A slice of bread is a closed hand, is about one serving size. And what we need to know is that one hand is the same as 15 grams of carbohydrate. So we could look at this and we can identify the corn tortilla has carbohydrate, the beans have carbohydrate, the rice have carbs, and then how much, right? So about a fist each. So we can say, remember, one fist, 15 grams. This is about 3 fists here. So this has about 45 grams of carbohydrate in your meal. So it can be a really fast way to use your hands. So awareness, portion control. The last thing is balance. How do we balance? So the example is if I were to eat a food that had carbohydrate, like an apple by itself, my blood sugar would go whoop, a little fast. But when we combine a food with carbohydrate with a protein or a fat, an example could be like peanut butter, has both protein and fat. So apple, peanut butter together, my sugar will still go up, but it'll go much slower with that protein and fat combined to it. So in this meal, we do have carbohydrate here, but we've got some ground beef in there, which is our protein. We have some non-starchy vegetables, which also is going to benefit and kind of slow down the rate that the carbs affect your blood sugar. So those 3 tools: awareness, portion control, balance.
So there's 3 carbohydrate foods there. Do we need to make sure we have 3 that are not, or enough of a portion of those? Because there's not a lot of vegetables there.
Yes.
So thinking about maybe how can we change the plate, or how can we still have this but make it maybe a little bit less carbs or a little bit more, like you said, veggie forward. So maybe with our rice here, we take half of it out and maybe put some squash and zucchini in it and add in a little bit more vegetables on our plate. You know, maybe you have a certain amount of carbs you can have per meal. So it's all about how you want to utilize your carbs. So if you really like tortillas, maybe you keep the tortilla on there and modify the rice and beans. Or if you're like, I'm not the biggest fan of tortillas, maybe putting it on a salad so you can have your rice and beans. So you can kind of, it's not strict. And that's the whole thing is with our whole program is it's not, we're telling you, this is how you have to eat. This is only the one way to eat. You have to do it this way. Like, no, it's really flexible to your lifestyle. So you can change the amount of, you get to pick what carbs go on your plate. It's again, just going to be the serving size and the amount on it. So there's different things we can do to this plate, but overall, this is a pretty good meal. Like we have our protein, we've got our carbs, you know, of course, as dietitians, we'd like to see a little bit more veggie bump on here, but overall, this is a pretty good meal. We don't eat everything separate all the time. So it's important to think of, sometimes foods are all mixed together. So you're not always going to be able to have your perfect little sections on your plate. Sometimes it's going to be in a soup or a stew, and it might be all mixed together. But it can still have balance on your plate, and it can still serve a purpose for our body, and it can still be beneficial, whether it's for maybe a little bit of joy or whether it's for nutritional benefit, you know? So again, it's all about mindfulness. Everything can fit on your plate and still be really delicious and bring you joy, you know? For me, I love traditional foods. I love eating stuff that's made by my mom. You know, I wouldn't want to cut that out fully, but, you know, maybe just sometimes modifying a little bit can be something that beneficial to make it work for you in your life.
Okay. So you talked about the protein in the meat. Is there a certain amount of meat or protein we need to get in a meal or a day? I'm just thinking of seniors. I eat so little protein.
Yeah, protein is an essential nutrient, especially as we get older. Our muscle mass goes down. So making sure you're getting your protein needs to keep up your muscle tissue, so important. So how much you need daily? Of course, it's always individual.
Right.
But generally speaking, about 60 grams per day is recommendation. So breaking that up to about 20 grams per meal would be the ideal. How do you do that? What does that look like? So you can think of like a piece of chicken. A serving size of chicken would be the size of your palm, or like if I had a deck of cards in my hands, that's a 3-ounce serving. Another way to break this down. So 1 ounce of animal meat has 7 grams of protein. 1 ounce has 7 grams of protein. So in a 3-ounce serving, 21 grams of protein. So meat sources are one of your best ways to get protein.
Can use our palm again.
There's that hand.
Enough meat on our plate as
Or
well.
beans.
We get it from plant-based
beans.
sources too.
So that's confusing because a little bit ago, beans were considered a high carb food. So talk a little bit about beans.
Absolutely. So beans, they're going to have carbs in them. It's a carbohydrate food, but they have the protein in it. And there's a very specific pairing between carbs and protein. When you put them together, they work really well together. So when you have a carb by itself, it'll spike your blood sugar. But anytime you add a protein onto that carb, again, it's instead of a very sharp spike, it's going to kind of be a little bit more of a curve. So that's why it's so beneficial. Even if beans have carbs in them, it's not going to spike your blood sugar as high because it's going to give it a little bit of curve because it's the carb and protein pairing. So I actually talked a little bit about having like an apple with some protein on it, like peanut butter. So anytime we have any sort of carb, even if it's maybe a dessert or a treat, even having some sort of protein on the side is going to be beneficial. So like at the end of night, if you want popcorn, you know, maybe having a protein stick, a cheese stick on the side. It is a protein stick. So having a cheese stick on the side can be really beneficial because it's going to help you with your blood sugar control. It's a really great first step if you just start identifying carbs and then making sure you're pairing with a protein. That can be a great first step.
And Bailey, you almost forgot the most important part of beans and dietitians. Fiber. Fiber in those beans.
So much fiber. Great for your digestive tract. Really, really works well for you.
Well, and you brought up another thing, cheese, which comes from milk, which is a dairy. And we just said dairy was high, but cheese is considered a protein.
Protein and fat and salt. It's why we love cheese.
It's got all the good stuff.
But it's lower in carbohydrate. So it's slow to digest because it has more fat and protein content. So it's a good combination with a food that has carbohydrate, like popcorn or fruit and cheese go well together. Yeah, it's a good addition.
So we've talked a little bit about fat, and there's a lot out there in the world about fat. There's good fat, bad fat. So I would assume that we should pick certain fats.
Yeah. Yes. More heart healthy, lean choices of fat. So those that are more plant-based, like oil, avocado oil, peanut oil, sunflower oil, canola oil. There's tons of different varieties, but those are more beneficial for your heart health. We also get good fats from avocado, from nuts and seeds like walnuts, pecans, almonds, things like that. and limiting more of those solid fats. When it's solid at room temperature, you can visibly see it. So butter, shortening, lard, animal fats, those are the things that we want to minimize. I kind of think about my heart and your veins, your arteries, your whole cardiovascular system. It's like a sink, right? So if we put those solid fats, clogs up the sink versus those liquids, like your blood's liquid, those oils are liquid. It just goes together. It makes sense.
Yes, it does. So, but fats do have more calories than protein. So we shouldn't probably use them as much as we use protein foods.
Correct.
And fats are included in our diet. You shouldn't cut out all fats. They're an important part of our diet. Our body needs those fats. It really makes you feel full and helps you be really satisfied. If, with fats, especially if you think about like adding an avocado in a meal or avocado toast, it can make you feel really full with not eating a ton of it. It also helps our body carry our nutrients throughout our body. So it does serve a purpose. It's really good for our skin and our hair and our nails, especially our organs. So it is good. But again, it's about being mindful about how much you're eating. So anything can be good in a small quantity and anything good in a large quantity can be bad. So either way, it's about how much you're eating it.
If we go back to the hand model, a serving of fat is the tip of a thumb.
Oh, just the tip?
Just the tip.
That little bit?
Just that little bit. That's the serving of fat.
Oh, my.
So you are right. It is more energy dense, more calorie dense. So a little bit
goes a long way.
A long way. Yeah.
What about, you talked about nuts just a little bit as a fat and also as a fiber. And so what is an amount that we could eat of nuts or seeds or things like that?
Yeah, a serving size is 1 ounce, which is the palm of the hand, not this one. This one, right? Those are really easy foods to sit down. We can snack on a lot of nuts, but you do want to be mindful of those foods because they have a lot of calorie. So just a palmful, 1 ounce is a serving size of nuts and seeds.
And you touched a little bit when you were talking about cheese, about sodium. Should we be worried about sodium if we have diabetes?
Yes. So if we think about our body as a whole, when what we eat affects multiple parts of our body. So we really want to be mindful of our heart health in general. And with fats, being mindful of our fats is going to help with our heart health. Another area is going to be sodium. So a lot of packaged and processed foods these days have a lot of sodium in it, especially if you think about chips or anything, like they have salt on top of the chips and inside of it. Some canned foods can have salt in it too. So we just want to be mindful about the amount we're having because with sodium, it can put pressure on our heart. So anytime you have salt, there's going to draw out water. If you've ever salted meat before and there's ever water on top, that's what it does. Salt's going to draw water. So what salt does in our body is it draws water, and that's going to affect our blood pressure. So if we have a lot of salt, more than likely our blood pressure is going to be pretty high just because of how salt and water interact. So we do want to be careful about how much salt we're eating, thinking about if we do have canned vegetables, great option. Canned vegetables can be really beneficial, especially if you want to add in a little bit of veggies, but maybe not cooking it, an entire veggie. But what we can do is actually wash out those veggies because, again, water and salt go together. So if you wash out your veggies, you're actually going to pull the salt out. So doing things like that, maybe seasoning your foods with a little bit more spices instead of salt, thinking about adding chili powder or cumin, paprika, basil, putting in more spices instead of salt. There's things that we can do to still add flavor because salt makes everything a little bit better, but we can be mindful and have a little bit of salt and maybe bump up what seasonings we're putting on. It can be really helpful.
Yeah, I would think back to my nuts, and I love pecans, so they don't have salt, but then sometimes we get the mixed nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be really careful about the salt on that as well. So this has been a lot of information to put together about. So maybe just do a little recap about portion size maybe and how to so we make sure everybody got that little bit.
Yeah. So the 3 tools, this is really what we talk about in our program, Diabetes Recharge. So awareness, number 1, which foods contain carbohydrate on your plate. Looking at that meal, thinking through which have carbs, then practice portion control. Use your hand as your guide. So 1 fist is 15 grams of carbohydrate or 1 serving. I don't think we mentioned this, but the serving sizes are different for men and women. For women, 2 fists or 30 grams of carbohydrate per meal for women. For men, 3 fists or 45 grams of carbohydrate per meal. So use your hand as your guide for portions. And then the last thing is have balance. So when you eat a food that has carbohydrate, balance that with a food that has protein or fats together to slow down how fast that carbohydrate is raising your blood sugar.
And we've mentioned many times what are starchy vegetables, but maybe we should touch on what are non-starchy vegetables, the ones that we can eat.
Yeah. So with our non-starchy vegetables, they're going to have a tiny bit amount of carbs in it, but they're not going to be nearly the same as like a potato. So for carb-wise, you could have so many more carrots that count the same amount as like a potato. So you could, I think it's like something like 4 or 5 bags of carrots for the same amount as like a potato worth of carbs. So you can do really good on the volume, because for me, I know I like to feel full after a meal. And sometimes if this doesn't satisfy me, having the non-starchy veggies, that's where they can come in and be really beneficial. So they're not freebies. I know a lot of time people call them freebies. They are less, but they're not completely free. But those are going to be things like carrots, broccoli, celery, tomatoes, daikon radishes, a load of random ones, asparagus, cauliflower, green
cabbage,
beans, lettuce. There's so many different
the rainbow.
Yeah.
Color is good too.
Radishes. There's so many different veggies, and especially thinking about frozen versus fresh veggies versus canned veggies, they all are going to have the same nutrient content, except actually frozen veggies might actually have a little bit more vitamins in it because they're picked right when they're fresh versus like a fresh lettuce is going to need a little bit more time to ripen, or like an apple needs a little bit more time to ripen versus like frozen vegetables are going to have a little bit more nutrients in it. So whether it's fresh, frozen, canned, they are all wonderful veggies and can be good for your blood sugar. So yeah, they're a great option to add to any meal to give us hydration overall.
Well, it was reminding me of some people only eat vegetables if they've been fried. And that's probably not as good, but it still would manage your blood sugar, but we would need to limit that portion.
Yeah. Deep fat frying, right? It's going to add more of those saturated fats. Those are the ones we want to limit or avoid. But I can understand that because we are looking, it's like the texture, how we prepare the vegetables to make them taste delicious. So an alternative might be roasting your vegetables. High temperature in the oven, like 400 degrees, 30 minutes to an hour, and you still get that crispy texture without all the added saturated fat from deep fat frying.
Especially with deep fat frying, it's going to be put into a batter, which is going to have carbs in it. So then we're taking a non-carb food and adding carbs on top.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super interesting. But I'm sure people have more questions. So we've talked just that you have this program called Diabetes Recharge, but it's a place people can go for support. And so can you give us just really briefly a little bit synopsis of that and how people can sign up for Diabetes Recharge?
Yeah, Diabetes Recharge, it's an individualized program. So when you enroll, you can meet one-on-one with a dietitian. And then we also have group classes. They are 4 weeks in length, and each class is about an hour. The classes are virtual and coming soon. In Clovis, we'll hopefully have an in-person option coming soon. It's a long-term program. So once someone is enrolled, then we connect with them in our connection sessions throughout the year. You can be with us for as long as you need. It's also a great way to connect with peers and form community. But how to enroll is if you are with a Presbyterian provider, ask your provider for a referral. If not, we also have a phone number that anybody can call. Our program is free. There is no insurance or payment required at all. It's open to the public. So that number is 505-923 5963 923 5963. So anybody can call and get enrolled in our program.
Wonderful. Well, we'd like to thank you for coming all the way out to McCary, and we have these cell phone holders
cool.
with our logo on them, which you can take back with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful information. It's been so fun to visit with you all. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you all for joining us today. Come back for our next episode where we will have another important topic to raise your health IQ.
Thank you.
Bye.
Diabetes Recharge is a free virtual education and support program that is designed to help newly diagnosed diabetics learn more about diabetes and how to manage it. The program offers group, individual, and ongoing sessions to support your unique needs, including nutrition, understanding your blood sugar readings, label reading, meal planning, physical activity, preventing complications, and managing your medications. To participate in this program, patients should ask your healthcare provider for a referral or call the Community Health Wellness Connection Center at 505-923-5963. All participants will receive a free workbook and recipes. Group sessions are held on Fridays via Zoom online.
Special thanks to our guest contributors this episode, Ashley Dunworth, registered dietitian, diabetes educator with Presbyterian Health Services, and Bailey Compton, registered dietitian. Our host was Brenda Bishop. Health IQ podcast crew. Our director was Robert F. Hockaday. Our producers are Robert F. Hockaday and Joyce Runyon. Our camera operator, Robert F. Hockaday. Our second camera assistant, Joyce Runyon. This episode was edited by Robert F. Hockaday. Credit music was provided by David Morris. Funding for Health IQ provided by a New Mexico Better Together grant. Brought to you by the Quay County Health Council. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Quay County Health. If you have any content ideas, reach out to us by email, healthIQpodcast@gmail.com. More info about this topic and more available on our Health IQ blog, QCHEALTHCO.UNCIL.org.
This video was also funded by Presbyterian Community Health CDC 2320 Award.
This podcast was created solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for advice from a healthcare or mental health professional.